My father, Benedict, raised his glass to my brother, Jack, anointing him the future CEO of the family empire. I, the daughter he dismissed, just smiled from the shadows. He didn't know that my little project had earned me enough to buy out his estranged partner. As he toasted the future, his lawyer, Mr. Hayes, handed me a folder and whispered, "The transfer's done. You own controlling shares now." This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The diagnosis hit me like a physical blow, sucking the air from my lungs and leaving a cold, metallic taste in my mouth. It wasn't the kind of news you absorb all at once. It was the kind that shatters your world into 1,000 pieces, and you're left staring at the fragments, unable to recognize the picture they once made. I was sick. Not a cold, not the flu, but a serious, systemic illness that had been quietly brewing while I poured every ounce of my energy into my work. The doctor's words were calm and measured, but they echoed in the sterile quiet of the examination room. Autoimmune, long-term, aggressive treatment. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for a full hour, the rhythmic beep of the unlocked door the only sound. I was 35 years old. I had built my own company, Aura AI, from nothing but a laptop and a concept my own family had laughed at. I was supposed to be in my prime, a shark in the deep waters of the tech industry, not fragile, not a patient. My first instinct, a deeply ingrained reflex, was to call home. Despite everything, the decades of being overlooked, the casual dismissals, the painful, glaring favoritism, a part of me still believed that in a true crisis, my family would be my bedrock. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers feeling thick and uncooperative. I dialed my mother, Paige. She picked up on the third ring, her voice breathless and artificially bright. "Jasmine, darling, is everything all right? You know we're in the middle of the pre-launch fittings. The caterer is being an absolute nightmare." "Mom," I started, my voice cracking. I just left the hospital. I got some bad news. It's serious, Mom." There was a pause, filled not with the maternal concern I craved, but with an impatient static. "Oh, dear," she said, her voice dropping. I could hear her muffled, speaking to someone else in the room. "Hold on, darling, Jax Taylor is here. Can this wait? Your father is just beside himself with excitement for the launch." "Mom, I'm sick," I said, my voice rising in desperation. "The doctor said." "Jasmine, please," she cut me off, her tone shifting from airy to annoyed. "Don't be dramatic. You're always working yourself into a state. You probably just need a vitamin drip. Now, I must go. Benedict is signaling me. We'll see you at the party tomorrow night. Do try to look cheerful, won't you? It's Jack's big day." The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone, the silence of the car suddenly deafening. It wasn't just a dismissal, it was a complete invalidation of my reality. Don't be dramatic. It's Jack's big day. My illness, my fear, my entire existence was, as always, an inconvenient subplot in the grand narrative of my brother, Jack, the chosen one. I leaned my head against the steering wheel, a single, hot tear of pure rage tracing a path through the foundation I'd applied that morning. The sickness was a terrifying, unknown shadow. But in that moment, what broke me wasn't the diagnosis. It was the chilling realization that to my own family, I was utterly, completely disposable. My phone buzzed again. For a wild, hopeful second, I thought it was my mother, calling back with a pang of conscience. But the name on the screen was Mr. Hayes, my lawyer. I swiped to answer, my voice thick. "Hello." "Ms. Jasmine," his voice was crisp, professional, and blessedly devoid of emotion. "I'm calling to confirm. The final wire transfer has been received from your corporate account. We have initiated the purchase from the third party as planned. All documents are prepared for signature." A different kind of adrenaline surged through me, sharp and cold, cutting through the fog of my diagnosis. This was the other part of my life, the one I had built in the shadows, the one my family knew nothing about. "And the timeline?" I asked, my voice miraculously steadying. Barring any unforeseen issues, the final registration of the share transfer should be complete by tomorrow, end of business, Hayes said. Which, if I recall, is the day of the Meridian Tech launch party. I closed my eyes. The party, the event my father, Benedict, was throwing to celebrate his company's new product and to unofficially crown Jack as his successor. The party my mother had just reminded me was more important than my health. Yes, Mr. H. Eyes, I said, a slow, cold smile touching my lips. That is perfect timing. Proceed as planned. I ended the call and put the car in reverse. The woman who had entered the hospital, scared and seeking comfort, was not the same one driving out. My mother was right about one thing. It was going to be a big day. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The drive from the hospital to my apartment was a blur of traffic lights and gray pavement. I operated on autopilot, my mind a turbulent sea of medical jargon and legal strategy. When I walked into my home, a minimalist, glass-walled space that overlooked the city, its sterile tidiness offered no comfort. It felt as empty as I did. The silence was absolute, amplifying the echo of my mother's careless words. I sat on my sofa, not bothering to take off my coat, and stared at the framed photo on my side table. It was from a rare family vacation, taken perhaps 10 years ago. We were all smiling, but the image was a lie. I was standing slightly apart from the tight-knit trio of Benedict, Paige, and Jack. Even then, I was the outlier, the satellite orbiting their bright, unified world. I'd spent my life trying to breach that orbit. I'd followed their path. I'd excelled in computer science, aiming for a place at Meridian Tech, my father's company. But while my code was elegant and my designs innovative, Jack's report cards were what my father framed. Jack got the Ivy League MBA, I got a pat on the head and a suggestion to find a nice husband. When I presented my father with a detailed proposal for a new AI-driven data security division, he had literally laughed. "Jasmine, this is adorable," he'd said, pushing the binder back at me. "Leave the real business to your brother. He understands the market." That was the day my little project, Aura AI, was born. It was forged not just from an algorithm, but from a lifetime of quiet, simmering rage. My phone rang again, pulling me from the memory. This time, the caller ID was Jack, my brother. A knot tightened in my stomach. Perhaps my mother had told him, and this was the call I had been waiting for. "Jasmine," he said, his voice impatient, exactly like our father's. "I'm at the venue. Mother said you were being difficult." My breath hitched. Difficult. "Yes," he sighed, as if explaining a complex concept to a child. "She said you were not feeling well and making a fuss. Look, I don't have time for this. I need you to call catering and sort out the vendor meal discrepancy. They're trying to charge us for the A-list entertainment's writers, and you're the only one with the original contracts for your event planning phase." I closed my eyes. Of course. Months ago, in a weak moment, I had offered to help coordinate the logistics for the launch party. I'd told myself it was a way to be involved, to show my competence. Now I saw it for what it was, another way for them to relegate me to the role of unpaid assistant. "Jack, I'm not well," I said, my voice low. "I was at the hospital. I have a serious autoimmune disorder." The silence on his end was heavy. But again, it wasn't empathy. It was annoyance. "A what, Jas, seriously? Today, you're going to pull this today? Do you have any idea the pressure I'm under? This launch is my entire future. Dad is literally handing me the company tomorrow night." He is," I whispered, though I already knew. "Yes, he is," Jack snapped. "It's the whole point of the party to announce me as the new COO and heir, so whatever. Odd thingy you need to put it on hold for 24 hours, be a team player for once. Call the caterer, sort it out, and be at the main entrance at 6 p.m. sharp tomorrow to check in the press. Don't make this difficult." He hung up. I sat there, the phone clutched in my hand, my knuckles white. Be a team player. Don't make this difficult. My entire life, I had been the difficult one simply for existing, for having needs, for daring to have ambitions that didn't revolve around propping up my brothers. My diagnosis, my fear, my pain, it was all just an inconvenience. An ill-timed distraction from the real event, the coronation of the king. I looked at the phone, at the blank screen where my brother's name had been. They saw me as a minor character, a stagehand in their grand play, but they were wrong. I wasn't the stagehand. I was the producer. I was the one who owned the theater. A cold, clear thought cut through my anger and my fear, and it repeated itself, a silent vow in the empty room. They had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten who I was. To understand my father, Benedict, you have to understand Meridian Tech. He didn't just build a company, he built a monument to himself. The gleaming, 20-story headquarters downtown wasn't just an office, it was his fortress, and he was its king. Benedict is a man who measures the world in stock tickers and market share. He respects only one thing, power, and in his eyes, I never had any. My childhood was a masterclass in being invisible. While Jack was paraded at dinner parties, praised for his grades and his perfect golf swing, I was the other one. The quiet, technical daughter. Benedict and my mother, Paige, treated my passion for coding as a quaint, nerdy hobby. "How sweet," Paige would say to her friends. "Jasmine has her little computer games." I wasn't playing games. I was writing kernel-level code by the time I was 16. I saw the future of tech, the inevitable rise of artificial intelligence and data-driven security, long before it was mainstream. My father, for all his bluster, was old school. Meridian Tech ran on legacy systems, on hardware and enterprise solutions that were rapidly becoming obsolete. When I was 22, fresh out of college with top honors, I built a fully functional predictive algorithm that could identify and neutralize security threats before they breached a system. I spent 6 months on it, sleeping in the university lab. I presented it to my father in his vast, mahogany-paneled office, my hands shaking with a mix of pride and nerves. He glanced at the first page of my report, then at me, over the top of his expensive glasses. "Jasmine, I'm trying to close a 9-figure deal with an avionics company. You're showing me a science project." "It's not a project, Dad," I insisted, my voice small. "It's a viable product. It's faster than anything on the market. Meridian could integrate it. It could change everything." He chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound that echoed in the cavernous room. "You're not a businesswoman, darling. You're an engineer. You don't understand scale or clients or the bottom line." "Jack," he called out, not even looking at me, "get in here." Jack, already an intern despite being only 19, swaggered in, all college logo fleece and unearned confidence. "Yeah, Dad." "Take your sister's thing," Benedict said, waving a hand at my life's work. "See if any of the junior guys in R and D want to play with it. Maybe it's a new screensaver." Jack smirked, taking the binder from me. "Sure thing, Dad. Don't worry, Jas. We'll find a nice spot for your art project." I walked out of that office and never looked back. That was the day I stopped trying to win his approval and started building my weapon. I named my science project Aura AI, and I incorporated it a week later. I took out loans, lived on instant noodles, and worked 100-hour weeks from a windowless rented office. While my family attended galas and yachting trips, I was pitching to venture capitalists, debugging code until 4 a.m., and slowly, painstakingly, building my fortress. Now, Aura AI was a silent giant. We handled the data security for some of the biggest, most sensitive financial and logistical corporations in the world. We were the company the other tech companies called when they had a problem they couldn't solve. I had built it in stealth, keeping my name off the press releases, channeling all profits back into the company. It was my secret, my little project, that was now worth more than I'd ever dreamed. This brings me to my uncle, Arthur, my father's brother, the ghost at the Meridian Tech Feast. Arthur was the brilliant, gentle co-founder of Meridian. He was the engineering genius, while my father was the ruthless salesman. 20 years ago, Benedict executed a brutal corporate coup, leveraging a market downturn to push his own brother out. It was a legendary, dirty fight that left Arthur emotionally and financially shattered. He retreated from the tech world, living quietly in obscurity. But my father had made one critical, arrogant mistake. In the settlement, to avoid a protracted legal battle that would have exposed his methods, he'd been forced to let Arthur retain a silent, non-voting 30% stake in the company. It was a powerless stake, unless it was combined with another. My father had made a second mistake, too. When I turned 21, he'd placed a 21% stake of Meridian in an ironclad trust for me. It was a tax maneuver, a way to move assets. In his mind, it was a token, a meaningless gesture. He never, ever imagined I would actually use it. He certainly never imagined that my little computer games would give me the capital to go after the other 30%. I found Arthur a year ago. He was living in a quiet coastal town, wary and hesitant. I didn't come to him with my father's bluster. I came with my own. I showed him what Aura AI was. I showed him my financials. And then I laid out my plan. Not just to buy his shares, but to take back the company he had helped build. He looked at me, his eyes, so much kinder than my father's, seeing me for the first time. "You're Benedict's daughter, all right," he'd mused. "You have his ambition, but you have my brain." He didn't just sell me his shares, he became my mentor. He taught me every dirty secret, every structural weakness, every hidden contract inside. Meridian Tech. And now, as I sat in my apartment, sick and betrayed, I knew that the foundation of their empire was built on sand. My father and brother were celebrating on the top floor of a building that, in less than 24 hours, I was going to own. The morning of the launch, I woke up not to the gentle glow of my alarm, but to a wave of dizziness that sent the room spinning. The symptoms of my illness were no longer a vague threat, they were a physical, tangible reality. I spent the first hour of my day on the phone with my new medical team, scheduling a daunting gauntlet of tests and infusions. Every yes and "I understand" felt like a concession, a small piece of my autonomy chipping away. For a fleeting moment, I was just Jasmine, the sick woman, scared and alone. Then my other phone buzzed, the one I used exclusively for Aura AI and my private legal matters. It was a notification from Mr. Hayes. "The registration is complete. We are green. See you at 19:00. The fear receded, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I was no longer just a patient. I was a strategist. I pushed myself out of bed, my body aching in protest, and walked to my home office. This was my war room. One wall was a floor-to-ceiling whiteboard, covered in flowcharts, legal structures, and timelines. For the past year, I had lived a double life. By day, I was the invisible CEO of Aura AI. By night, I was the architect of the most significant hostile takeover in Meridian Tech's history. My clever trap was, in reality, a meticulously crafted legal pincer movement. Acquiring my Uncle Arthur's 30% stake was the first step. The second was activating my own 21% trust. My father, in his infinite arrogance, was the trustee. But the trust's bylaws, drafted by a lawyer from a bygone era, had a loophole he'd never read. The beneficiary could move for an independent trustee if they could prove parental negligence or conflict of interest. My father's laughter in his office, his dismissal of my career, his constant, public anointing of my brother as the sole heir, he had provided the proof himself. For 6 months, Mr. Hayes's team had been quietly and lethally petitioning the court. We won the motion 2 weeks ago. My father received the notice, but I knew him. He would have seen it as a legal nuisance, a gnat to be swatted, and passed it to his in-house counsel, who were no match for Hayes. He never even knew what he'd lost. Now, I was the sole, uncontested controller of 51% of Meridian Tech. But owning the company wasn't enough. My father was a shark. He would find a way to fight back, to rally the board, to paint me as an ungrateful child. I needed to neutralize his power completely. I needed to understand what my brother, the future CEO, had really been doing. This was where my little project came in. Aura AI wasn't just my piggy bank, it was my weapon. I'd spent the last 3 months running a deep, forensic analysis of Meridian Tech's network. It was, in a word, a mess. Their security was a joke, a patchwork of outdated firewalls and lazy protocols. But it was what I found inside that was truly staggering. Jack, my brilliant, MBA-wielding brother, was a fraud. He hadn't been growing the company. He'd been siphoning it. I found a complex web of shell corporations, inflated invoices, and consulting fees paid to companies that, upon further inspection, were owned by Jack himself. He was clumsy, arrogant, and greedy, using the company's accounts as his personal slush fund to finance a lifestyle even his generous salary couldn't support. He was stealing millions. And my father, Benedict, the king, the master of the universe, his signature was on half the approvals. He was either grossly negligent or fully complicit. Either way, he was compromised. I bundled the data, the offshore account numbers, the falsified invoices, the internal emails, into a secure, encrypted file. This wasn't just leverage, it was a kill shot. I spent the rest of the day in a blur. I finalized the new org chart. I drafted the press release. I had a 2-hour conference call with my new board members, allies of my Uncle Arthur, who had been waiting in the wings for this very day. At 5:00 p.m., I shut my laptop. I showered, the hot water washing away the tremors of my illness. I did my makeup with a steady hand, concealing the dark circles under my eyes. I chose my outfit, a bespoke midnight blue Armani suit, not a dress. A suit, it was armor. As I was about to leave, my phone rang. It was my mother, Paige. "Jasmine, thank goodness," she trilled, all traces of yesterday's annoyance gone. "Darling, I'm having a crisis. The seating chart is a disaster. Mrs. Vandersomething is threatening to leave because she's not at the head table. Could you possibly get here right now and fix it? You've always been so good at those little details." I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were cold, clear, and utterly calm. "I'm sorry, Mother," I said, my voice SM. "Ooth as glass, I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "Jasmine, I am not in the mood for one of your episodes. This is for your brother." "I know," I said, "but I'm running late. I have a rather important meeting I need to prepare for." "A meeting? Tonight? Don't be ridiculous. What could possibly be more important than your brother's launch party?" I smiled, a small, tight smile that didn't reach my eyes. "You'll see," I said, and I hung up. I arrived at the launch party not through the main entrance, where my mother had expected me to be clipboard in hand, but through the private garage, using the executive-level key card that Mr. Hayes had delivered to me that afternoon. The card, encoded to the new majority owner, granted me access to areas my father's own card would soon find locked. The venue was an enormous, glass-walled atrium at the top of a downtown skyscraper, dripping with extravagance. Ice sculptures of the Meridian Tech logo melted slowly under soft blue lights. Waiters circulated with champagne and impossibly small appetizers. Hundreds of people, tech journalists, city council members, sycophantic board members, and clients, mingled, the air thick with false laughter and the scent of expensive perfume. I spotted my family holding court near the stage. Benedict, my father, was in his element, his voice booming as he clapped a senator on the back. Paige, my mother, looked radiant in silver, her smile plastered on as she scanned the room for anyone more important. And Jack, my brother, stood beside my father, soaking in the adulation. He looked every bit the young prince, tailored suit, perfect hair, and a smirk that screamed, "I've already won." I stayed in the shadows at the edge of the room, sipping a glass of water, watching them. For the first time in my life, I felt no anger, no jealousy, only a profound, cold pity. They were like actors in a play, reading their lines with gusto, completely unaware that the show was closing. After about 20 minutes, Jack spotted me. His eyes narrowed, and he broke away from his group, striding over. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep. "Where the hell have you been?" he hissed, his smile not wavering for the benefit of the crowd. "Mother's been calling you. The press packets are a mess." "Hello, Jack," I said calmly, removing his hand from my arm. "You look well." "Don't play games, Jasmine. I told you this was important. You were supposed to be working. You're always so unreliable. It's pathetic." Unreliable, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's an interesting choice of words. I'd say I'm the most reliable person you know. He scoffed. Right, you and your little AI company. Did it finally go bankrupt? Is that why you're here, hoping Dad will give you an allowance? This was the moment, the pivot. Actually, I said, my voice low and clear, I wanted to talk to you about consulting fees. Specifically, the ones paid by Meridian to a shell company called J Squared Innovations. Registered in the Cayman Islands. Ring any bells? The color drained from Jack's face. His arrogant smirk vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed, sickly pallor. He looked, for the first time, exactly like a little boy who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, his eyes darting around to see if anyone was listening. I think you do, I continued, taking a small, almost imperceptible step toward him. I'm talking about $4.2 million, Jack, falsified invoices for market analysis. All approved by you, all siphoned directly from the company's R&D budget. He grabbed my arm again, this time in a panic. Shut up, what are you trying to blackmail me? Blackmail? I let out a small, dry laugh. No, Jack, blackmail is so unsophisticated. I'm just gathering data. I'm a tech person, remember? I love data. And this data, the wire transfers, the account numbers, the email chains, it's fascinating. You're lying, he whispered, his voice trembling. You can't prove anything, you're nobody. Dad will crush you. Will he? I asked, my gaze shifting to our father, who was now laughing, oblivious, across the room. The funny thing about those approvals, half of them have his signature, too. BR, right on the dotted line. It seems you two have been very, very busy building the company together. Jack's entire body was shaking. The alpha male, the heir apparent, had evaporated. In his place was a terrified, cornered animal. What do you want? He whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Money, do you want money? I'm not here for your pocket money, Jack, I said, my voice turning to ice. I'm here for the entire bank. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe our father is about to give a speech. You wouldn't want to miss it. It's your big day, after all. I turned and walked away, leaving him frozen in place, the champagne glass slipping from his suddenly nerveless fingers and shattering on the floor. The sound of the breaking glass was lost in the sudden swell of music as the lights dimmed. My father, Benedict, stepped up to the podium on stage, a spotlight finding him. He tapped the microphone, his image appearing on the massive screens flanking the stage. Thank you, he boomed, his arms spread wide as if to embrace the entire city. Welcome, friends, partners, visionaries. Welcome to the future of Meridian Tech. The room erupted in applause. I watched from the back, a still point in the swirling room. Beside me, Mr. Hayes had materialized, silent as a shadow. He held a sleek, leather-bound folder. All in order, Ms. Jasmine, he murmured, not looking at me, his eyes on the stage. And the board? I asked, just as quietly. The emergency session is set for 9 a.m. tomorrow. The notices were delivered to all members 1 hour ago. They are eager to hear your new direction. On stage, my father was in full flight. For 30 years, I have built this company from the ground up. I've dedicated my life to innovation, to strength, to leaving a legacy. But a legacy is not just about buildings or products. It's about blood. I saw Jack rejoin my mother, Paige, near the front. He looked pale, his smile a grotesque, painted-on grimace. He was visibly sweating. Paige, oblivious, touched his arm, her face glowing with pride. My son, Jack, Benedict continued, gesturing to him. An Ivy League MBA, a man who understands the business of technology. A man who, unlike others, knows that you can't build an empire on a science project. He paused for the laughter, and the crowd, his loyal subjects, obliged. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes, my parents' friends and longtime board members, flick to me. I was the punchline, the family joke. I held their gaze, my expression unreadable. Jack is the future, my father declared. He has been my COO, my right hand, and it is my immense pleasure to announce that, as I step back to an oversight role, he will be taking over as the new CEO of Meridian Tech. The applause was deafening. My mother burst into tears, hugging Jack, who looked like he was going to be sick. Benedict raised his glass. To the future, to my son. The entire room raised their glasses. To Jack, they echoed. I just smiled. As the applause died down, my father, still basking in the glow, said, "And now, a presentation on the new Meridian platform, led by the man himself, Jack." Jack stumbled forward, looking to my father with desperate, panicked eyes. Benedict frowned, confused by his heir's sudden terror. "Go on, son," he prompted, his voice still on the mic. "It's your moment." Jack walked to the podium as if heading to the gallows. He fumbled with his notes. Thank you, Dad. Father, Benedict." He stared out at the crowd, at the expectant faces, and he saw me. The future," he stammered, "is about synergy, it's about integration." He knew that I knew, he knew that I had the data. His world was collapsing, in public, under the brightest of spotlights. "He's stalling," I murmured to Hayes. "It seems so," Hayes replied. Jack's rambling became more incoherent. He was talking about verticals and markets in a high-pitched, panicked tone. My father's proud smile had curdled into a look of confusion, then deep, public embarrassment. "What's wrong with him?" Paige whispered, loud enough for the front rows to hear. This was the second confrontation. Not with me, but with himself, with the truth. I had given him the data. Now I would give him the proof. I gave Mr. Hayes a single nod. Hayes stepped forward and signaled to a technician at the back, one of my own people from Aura AI, who I had placed on the event staff. Jack was saying, and our projections, our financials, there. "Perhaps I can help with that," my voice said, clear and amplified. A new screen descended from the ceiling, larger than all the others. And on it, in stark, undeniable black and white, was the first page of the forensic audit. The J-Squared Innovations logo, the wire transfer numbers, the dates. Jack stopped breathing. My father, Benedict, squinted at the screen. "What is this? What is the meaning of this? Who authorized this?" "That," I said, stepping out of the shadows and walking calmly toward the stage, "is the real financial report. The one that shows $4.2 million in R&D funds being wired to an offshore shell corporation owned by the new CEO." The room went utterly silent. You could hear a pin drop. I stopped at the foot of the stage, looking up at my family. My mother's face was a mask of horrified confusion. My brother was hyperventilating. My father's face turned a deep, blotchy purple. "Jasmine, you are embarrassing this family. Security, get her out of here." "They don't work for you anymore, father," I said, my voice resonating with calm authority. "What did you say, Hiar?" "Lord." "I said," I repeated, "they don't work for you. In fact, you don't work for you." I turned to Mr. Hayes, who stepped forward. "As of 4:52 p.m. today," Hayes announced, his voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel, "all 30% of the shares belonging to Mr. Arthur Reynolds and all 21% of the shares held in trust for Ms. Jasmine Reynolds were consolidated under a new holding company. This entity, Aura Holdings, is solely owned and controlled by Ms. Jasmine. She is, as of this moment, the 51% majority owner of Meridian Tech." The silence in the atrium was absolute, a crushing weight that sucked all the air out of the room. My father, Benedict, stood frozen at the podium, his face a canvas of disbelief, his raised champagne glass still trembling in his hand. My mother, Paige, looked back and forth between my father and me, her perfectly applied smile now a gaping, uncomprehending "oh." And Jack simply crumpled. He backed away from the podium, tripping over a monitor cable and landing hard on the stage, a pathetic heap of tailored wool and broken pride. "Jasmine," my father finally choked out, his voice a hoarse whisper. This is a joke, a sick, childish joke. You can't." "I can," I said, my voice steady and clear, carrying to every corner of the room. I walked up the few steps to the stage, the sound of my heels on the floorboards the only noise. I didn't look at my brother, cowering on the floor. I didn't look at my mother, who was now weeping silently. I walked directly to my father, stopping just in front of him. "You're right about one thing, Father," I said, my voice low but unwavering. "A legacy is about blood. You just spent 30 years backing the wrong horse." You ungrateful," he began, his face contorting with rage. "Ungrateful?" I cut him off, my voice rising for the first time, not in anger, but in pure, crystallized power. "I am the one who came to you at 22 with the future of this company, and you told me to go design a screensaver. I am the one who built a multi-million-dollar corporation from the science project you laughed at, and I am the one who just used the profits from my company to buy your company." I turned to the audience, who were watching this family evisceration with a mix of horror and fascination. "For decades, you have all watched my father and my brother operate this company. You've attended their parties, you've applauded their speeches. And in that time, my brother, the future CEO, has been systematically defrauding it." I gestured to the screen, where Mr. Hayes's technician now scrolled to the next slide. Copies of bank-stamped wire transfers, each one bearing Jack's digital signature. "He has been stealing from all of you. From the shareholders, from the employees, from the partners. And my father, the great visionary, either knew about it and was complicit, or he was so blinded by his own arrogance that he didn't see the theft happening right under his nose. I'm not sure which is worse." "No," Paige whispered, shaking her head. "No, Benedict, tell them it's not true. Jack, stand up and tell her she's lying." Jack just stared at the screen, tears streaming down his face. He was broken. "He can't, Mother," I said, my voice softening with a sad finality. "Because it is true, I have every receipt, every email, every bank record. Aura AI is a data security firm. This," I gestured to the evidence, "is what I do." Finally, my father's paralysis broke. He lunged, not at me, but at the screen's control panel, trying to shut it off. "Lies, slander, I'll have you arrested." "No, you won't," Mr. Hayes said calmly from the floor. "The authorities have already been provided with a copy of this file. They are, I believe, waiting for you both at your homes." That was the final blow. My father stopped, his hand hovering over the panel. He turned to me, his eyes hollowed out, the bluster and rage gone, replaced by a terrifying, empty void. He had lost. He knew it. "You," he whispered, "my own daughter." "Yes," I said, "your daughter." This was the moment, the final, triumphant break. Jack, my brother, the chosen one, finally looked at me. His gaze wasn't angry. It was confused, as if he was seeing me for the first time, not as his sister, but as a person, a force. "You did this," he said, his voice a child's whisper. "You really did all this." "I did," I replied. He looked at our father, at the man who had built him up, and in doing so, destroyed him. He looked at the evidence on the screen. Then, in a final, decisive action, Jack stood up on wobbly legs. He didn't look at our parents. He looked at me, and in front of everyone, he said, He made me. He told me it was how the game was played. He told me to be a shark." My father's head snapped toward him. "You weak, pathetic." "I'm done," Jack said, his voice gaining a small, trembling shred of conviction. He turned and walked off tee. He staged, past our stunned parents, past the silent crowd, and out the main doors. He was walking away from the company, from the money, from the lie. In his own way, he was finally free. I turned back to the podium, to my father, who now looked old and utterly defeated. I took the microphone from his unresisting hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to the crowd, "my apologies for the interruption. The launch of the new Meridian platform is canceled, but I invite you all back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. for a new presentation, the one where I will introduce you to the new Meridian Tech, a company built on transparency, innovation, and integrity, a company that will be run by its new CEO. Me, thank you for coming." The fallout was immediate and absolute. As I'd predicted, my father, Benedict, and my brother, Jack, were both detained by federal agents before they could even get to their cars. The ensuing investigation was swift and brutal. The evidence I had compiled with Aura AI was so meticulous, so undeniable, that their legal teams had no room to maneuver. My father, in a last-ditch effort to save himself, tried to pin the entire fraud on Jack, claiming his son had forged his signatures and acted alone. But the email chains proved his complicity beyond a doubt. His betrayal of his own son was the final, pathetic act of a desperate man. Benedict was found guilty of multiple counts of corporate fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 8 years in a federal, white-collar prison. His legacy, the thing he valued above all else, was not a gleaming tower but a public record of disgrace. Jack, in a move that surprised everyone, pleaded guilty to all charges. He cooperated fully, detailing not only his own actions, but the pressure and education he had received from our father his entire life. His remorse, combined with his cooperation, earned him a lighter sentence, 18 months, plus a lifetime ban from serving as an officer in any publicly traded company. My mother, Paige, was destroyed, not by the fraud but by the public humiliation. Her name was ruined in the social circles she worshipped. She was no longer a queen of society, she was the wife of a convicted felon. She retreated from public life, selling their mansion and moving to a quiet, anonymous condo. She and I have not spoken since that night. The day after the party, I walked into the Meridian Tech boardroom at 9 a.m. The old board members, my father's cronies, sat stunned and ashen-faced. I calmly accepted their resignations, one by one. I then installed my new board, led by my uncle, Arthur, who took his place at the table with quiet, profound vindication. My first act as CEO was to clean house. I fired the corrupt executives who had enabled my father and brother. I shut down the failing legacy projects. And then, I did what I had wanted to do since I was 22. I merged Aura AI with Meridian Tech. We rebuilt the company from the ground up. We poured resources into the AI-driven security platform I had designed. We built a new culture based on talent, not nepotism. Within a year, Meridian Tech, the new Meridian, was the most innovative and respected name in the industry. And what of my health? The diagnosis was real, and it is a battle I fight every day. But with the resources I now commanded, I assembled the best medical team in the country. The fight for my health and the fight for my company became one and the same, a daily act of resolve, of strategy, and of refusing to lose. About a year later, I received a letter. It was from Jack, written on prison issue paper. It was short, and the handwriting was unsteady. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't make excuses. He just said 2 things. First, that he was sorry. And second, that for the first time in his life, he was taking classes, basic coding classes, and he finally understood the science project I had shown my father all those years ago. He said it was brilliant. I folded the letter. I don't know if there will ever be a full reconciliation. The wounds are too deep. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that the brother I'd once known, before he was molded into the chosen one, might still be in there. Last week, I stood on the same stage where my father had tried to humiliate me. The room was filled, but this time, the applause was for me as we unveiled a new, revolutionary data healing program. After the presentation, my Uncle Arthur and I shared a glass of champagne. He would have hated this, Arthur said, a twinkle in his eye. Hated what? I asked. This, he said, gesturing around the room. The success, the innovation, and the fact that you're doing it all and you're not even a man. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. The bitterness that had fueled me for so long was finally gone, replaced by something lighter. Peace, vindication. I looked out over the city, my city, from the top of my tower. My father had been right. A legacy is about BL. Ood, but he had forgotten that blood is thicker than water, and my blood was forged in iron.